everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you've never been here before, you don't know me, I'm Leighann. It's great to have you. Today we're doing kind of like a combo video. It's gonna be an interesting combination. I really hope you like it. I don't think I've ever seen a video like this on YouTube. It's probably out there. I just haven't seen it. I hope you guys like it because it's a strange combination. I mean, sometimes people like strange combinations, right? Like when I was little, my mom used to sprinkle cheese over pears and that would be like a dessert. I never got down with that combo, but I think it's a thing people do, or at least my mom did it. People like strange combinations and I'm really hoping you like this strange combination I'm about to serve to you. It's a couple requests I'm trying to satisfy. It's been videos I've been wanting to do for a long time and I just decided to combine them. So the first request is for a makeup look that I've been wearing on and off whenever I want to be like a little more sparkly, a little more glam. I wouldn't say I'm generally like a glam girl. I usually do pretty simple makeup. I feel like that's what works for my face. But as far as like working with glitter and stuff like that, I don't usually go for it. But this is the look that I've been doing when I really want to like go there with it. So many of you have requested the look and so I've been meaning to show it to you, so I'm going to do that. So mainly it's the eye look that I'm showing you. I'm using a lot of this palette, but I'll show you the whole face as I'm talking to you, because the other request I've gotten so much for the last few months is you guys want me to share all of my recent podcast favorites. Y'all know, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I am obsessed with podcasts. I listen to podcasts like it's like drinking water, like it's constant. And for about the last year or so, it's all been true crime stuff and you guys get me on that and I love that. I'm always finding new ones and I share them with you guys like here and there and like in favorites videos and really in random videos and on my vlog channel all the time. But I haven't made like one video talking about all of my recent favorites in quite a while. So I wanted to do that as I'm doing my get ready with me. Oh, actually, let me just like kind of quantify my love for podcasts. This is actually maybe probably embarrassing. So I listen to all my podcasts on Stitcher. It says I'm a listener since June 17th, 2013. And I've listened to 1,432 hours and 11 minutes of podcasts since 2013. That's definitely a lot, right? I will give a little mini disclaimer right now. If you don't like true crime stuff, if you're not into the ID channel, if you don't watch forensic files, if that is not your jam, you will probably not like these podcasts. So I'm going to be talking about 6 different podcasts and I'm going to try to not give any spoilers, but kind of give you a taste of what it's about. Okay, I really need to stop blabbing. This intro is way too long. I really hope you guys like this combination. If you're not subscribed to my channel, I'd really appreciate it. If you subscribe, if you're into this kind of video, give it a thumbs up. I'd like to do more stuff like this. If you have requests of videos kind of like this, I'm listening. Let me know in the comments. I need to get some makeup on my face because I'm kind of a mess. I've been having skin issues. Like this is a scab. It's gonna be tough to cover up, but the main thing that I'm focusing on to show you today during this video is my eyes and how I do that eye look. So it's okay if my skin looks kind of busted and crazy. That's okay, right? I feel like I haven't done a get ready with me in so long because I kind of felt like you guys weren't that into them anymore, but here we are doing it again. Cheers to us and cheers to this really weird lighting. I will say, if I forget to tell you a product like I just did, I will put the whole product list and links in the description down below. The primer I just used is the Makeup Forever Step 1 Hydrating Primer. I use it every day. I love it. Next up, I'm using the Urban Decay Naked Skin Peach Corrector under my eyes, and I also use it on the veins and discoloration down here. I'm like a veiny girl down here. I really don't like it. I also have a lot of veins on my face and a lot of discoloration under my eyes, so I throw it on under there too. I love this stuff. I probably just need to start talking to you about podcasts because I have 6 to talk to you about. The ears have come to party. First off, I'll talk to you about the podcast I started listening to most recently, and this one gets to me. It's actually something I've heard about in the past from a different podcast. It's one of those cases that I feel like every true crime podcast that just does like different crimes has talked about because it is so disturbing. So the whole podcast centers around the story of Susan and Josh Powell and their 2 little boys. I guess this is kind of a spoiler, but you've probably heard of this case before if you listen to true crime podcasts. It's just a really interesting story, but this podcast goes so much deeper than I've ever heard the story before. They have access to Susan's journal. They have access to her friends. They interview some of her friends and people that were close to her. and they get their stories. They talk to some of the police that were involved in the case, but it's just so interesting because they have so much more information, and I feel like they had crazy access to a bunch of different people that were in their lives, that were around when all this stuff went down. So just briefly about the story, I don't want to give a ton of spoilers away because I still want you to like enjoy the podcast and everything. Susan Powell disappeared. She was married to Josh and they had a crazy marriage. Josh's whole backstory, his upbringing, his family life, his father, there's a lot of story there. There's a lot of creepy, weird stuff in his backstory, and that's what he came from. And then their marriage had a lot of problems. He was super, super controlling of Susan in every way possible. She really seemed to do her best with it. He would barely let her spend money on anything. He barely let her have access to the vehicle. He was just so controlling and isolated her so much from other people. And it just seems like their marriage was just miserable. Next up, I'm moving on to concealer to try to conceal some of this stuff on my face. I honestly, this week, I've just kind of been like, you know what? It is what it is. And they poke through and I just don't even care. Back to Susan and Josh. She mysteriously disappeared. But leading up to this, she had told a couple of different people in her life that like, if something happens to me, make sure they look at my husband. Like, she was scared. She was scared because he had done different things like taking out life insurance policies, and just the way he talked generally, it just creeped her out. And I just think he was a terrible husband. So she wasn't happy. She did give some warning signs, but I think she was trying to make the best of it. So she went missing and they were investigating Josh. And then 2 years later, I feel like this is a spoiler. I'm sorry if you haven't heard about it, but these are the bare bone facts of the podcast. There is so much more to the story. They go so deep. So I'm just going to go ahead with it. Generally, his story does not add up and he's being investigated. Everyone is kind of looking at him, thinking that he's involved, like even members of his family. Like it does not look good for him. But sadly, I think it was about 2 years later, Josh kills himself and his 2 sons. Like, heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. He burns down his house. It's just, oh. Honestly, I was a little bit hesitant to even listen to this podcast after I heard what case it was about, because this is one that it honestly kind of shook me. Like, I was uncomfortable hearing this story, but unfortunately, I am just one of those people that cannot get enough. Like, I'm a glutton for punishment. Like, this whole story creeps me out to no end, but I couldn't stop listening to it. And the access they have to everything, the journals, the interviews, like the detail is so good. So Cold was actually one of the podcasts that was recommended to me by one of my viewers. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And like when you guys give me suggestions, I really do like look them up instantly and like add them to my list and listen to them. So I've been loving that one. I'm not done with it, but I can definitely recommend it. I have not been able to turn it off. Okay, so I'm gonna wait to do the rest of my face makeup, like my under eye concealer, bronzer, blush, all of that business. And I'm gonna do my eyes first. I normally don't do my eyes before my face makeup, but because I'm using a lot of shimmer from this palette on my eyes, I kind of wanna help myself out a little bit. And if I end up getting sparkles on my face, I can clean that up with my concealer and everything. So first, I'm grabbing a palette from the Balm. It's Meet Matrimony, and really I'm just using this kind of off-white beige shade to go over my lids because I just went over them with some concealer just to cancel out all the veins and everything, because if I don't set my lids, they get so creasy so fast. Oh, you know what? I can't believe I didn't say this. This look would be perfect for Valentine's Day. I feel like I have to say that because Valentine's Day is coming up and it would be perfect, but it's kind of an everyday glam look. Okay, now I'm ready to start on my eyes. Isn't this a pretty palette? It's Bobbi Brown's Infra-Red eyeshadow palette, and they actually sent this to me. And I've never loved a Bobbi Brown eye palette as much as I've loved this one. This is so amazing. And as you can see, it is an absolute disaster. This shadow, which is my favorite one from the whole palette, like exploded in shipping. It was everywhere. But the moment I touched it, I was like, I love this shadow. I must save it. And I swooped in there with my rubbing alcohol, and it still kind of looks like a train wreck, but it works and I love it. And all the rest of the shadows that I'm going to use on my eyes today, except for a matte black, I'm going to be using from this palette. I think it is limited edition, but I'm pretty sure it's still available on Sephora. I'll put the link down below if you want to check, but this is so pretty. And really the star shadow is the one that broke. It is almost a metallic kind of champagne color, and it's kind of messy and it's very glittery, but it is so worth it. So I'm gonna stop talking to you about it and start using it. First off, I'm dipping into this kind of off beige color to go through my crease as a transition color. And the next podcast I want to talk to you about is Happy Face. This podcast is so unique. It comes from a completely different perspective than I've ever heard in any other true crime podcast, because it mainly focuses on Melissa Moore, who's the daughter of Keith Hunter Jesperson, who is the Happy Face killer. He killed at least 8 women in the early 90s before he was caught in, I think, 1995. And like all true crime documentaries and podcasts, it does focus a lot on the crimes, the murders, the victims, and the life of the murderer and his possible motives and where he was in his life and how everything got resolved. Of course, it covers all of those bases, but it also talks a lot to and about the effect and the impact it's had on Melissa throughout her life. I don't remember exactly how old she was when he was caught, but I think she was a teenager. And obviously that's gonna have a huge effect on you. I'm not gonna go into the crimes because it's absolutely brutal, but they talk to Melissa so much and they go through her life and they get her perspective and what her life was like growing up with him. They also talk to her mother, who was married to him, and they talk about all the weird things that happened and how she felt with him and what he was like before all this happened. So really, I just feel like it is such a unique and valuable and interesting perspective to hear from the child of a serial killer. And it's just from the 90s. It's not even from that long ago. Okay, next up, I'm going into this super warm, kind of medium brown. It's almost orange. I really like this. Oh my gosh, my lashes are so crazy. I need to get them touched up. This eye is like going down like the Titanic, and this eye is like, oh, hey guys, I'm here, ready to party. It's just like, could they at least die at the same rate? I have lash extensions, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, and they fall out over time. It's wonderful. So I'm just using this color kind of up in the crease, not too high, and on the outer third a whole bunch. Okay, so back to the podcast. I really like the host. I really like how they present the episodes. I loved how many family members they talked to. They definitely went far back in his family history, like looking at his parents growing up, looking at his family life, trying to trace back how all this started, like why he is the way he is. That's the thing I always want to know, like how did this happen to this person? How did they arrive at this place where this is something that they did? Oh, another thing that they did that was so interesting and so heartbreaking. Melissa actually got to meet one of her father's victims' sons and talk to him. Really, I almost can't even believe that that was part of the podcast, because it's such a moment, like having those two people come together because of this horrible way that their parents' lives crossed. That episode, or it might have even been 2 episodes, they were just insane. Oh, and Melissa also goes and gets a scan on her brain. I don't remember the name of it, but it's basically supposed to look at patterns in the brain to see if you're a psychopath. Because she's so worried, because she's got this father that has done these horrible things, and she knows, like, this is the man I came from, this is where I'm from, and she's just so concerned that that's part of her. And it's something that you never get to see. It is a look into a life that is so rare. The child of a serial killer. Well, she's an adult woman now, but still the daughter of a serial killer. Obviously, very into that podcast. I would definitely recommend it. It has, I believe, 12 episodes total, and they are all done now. So yeah, you can get that one on Stitcher too. Definitely recommend it, but it's a lot. I'm just gonna say that it's a lot. Also, this eyeshadow kind of got a little bit out of hand because I was just talking and blending and talking and blending. Okay, next up, I'm gonna be going into this really dark brown color, and I'm gonna be focusing that on the outer corners and a little bit up into the crease, but it's gonna be very concentrated on the outer edge because I don't have a lot of lid space, so I have to be careful with that, but this is gonna be the darkest color that I use. And the next podcast I'm gonna be recommending is called Broken Hearts. It is the heartbreaking, tragic story of Jennifer and Sarah Hart and their 6 adopted children. This really only just happened last year. And to be honest with you, I had no idea this happened. I feel bad like telling this story and not making like eye contact with you, not looking at the camera, because it is so tragic and it is so heartbreaking, and I don't know, almost feels insensitive. Please don't take it that way. That's how I'm feeling. Hopefully it's not coming off like that. But the very bare bones basic story is that one day Jennifer was driving the family's SUV filled with her family and drove off a cliff at a high speed. And they all died, or it's assumed that they all died because I believe 2 of the children are still missing. This is some deep, scary stuff, and I'm so sorry if this makes any of you guys upset and maybe you just wanted a makeup tutorial. Maybe this is all such a bad idea. I'm not really sure, but I'm sorry because I know this story is so dark, but there is just so much to it that makes it so fascinating and just so horrifying. So Jennifer and Sarah were like the picture of love and happiness, or at least that's how they presented themselves online, on Facebook, and to other people. They were really active in like the whole like hippy dippy kind of community, and they did move around a lot, but it seemed like they had a lot of friends, or at least that's the impression that I got. And they adopted these 6 kids, and they were always making like super cute posts about them online, and they told these stories that drew people in. Stories about their family, story about their lives, story about their kids. They like really laid it all out there. And so people really like loved them so much, tried to root for them through their hardship, and also just praised them for all the great things they did by taking in these children and all of that. But what's crazy is all the while behind the scenes, there was abuse going on, or there were signs of abuse that people were noticing, like their neighbors. And those poor 6 children were trapped in a horrible situation. But this podcast goes in and they talk to a bunch of different people they knew, like some of their friends that thought like, hey, this is like the perfect family and love them, but also talk to like their neighbors that had really scary interactions with them, like things that really made them think twice about them. It's just, again, so heartbreaking to know that things like that can be going on and you have no idea. Like, you know, that cute family that you follow on YouTube or on Instagram, like you don't know the whole story. They put up such a great, loving, happy front online, and that was not the case at all. Oh girl, I went a little too hard with that dark color. Talking about true crime and doing makeup, I don't know if it's for me. I'm just going back into that medium brown color and trying to help blend out the darker color a little bit more. This is definitely way more blending than I usually do in my like everyday makeup looks. Okay, next up, I'm finally going into my favorite shade from the palette. It is almost mirrored. It is so glittery and pigmented, and it's really soft. It's super easy to work with, but you do need to be careful because it's glittery and there can be fallout, and you don't want to like get it all into your lashes, especially if you have lash extensions like me. I've tried it with glitter glue before, but I didn't really like how it sat on top of that, so I don't put anything down first. You certainly can. I really just go in with my finger and then I tap it off because the fallout is real with this shadow, but it's worth it. And then I go in on my eye, and I do kind of have to concentrate. So we're gonna wait a second before we talk about the next podcast, which is going to be Helen Gone. It is so good. So I focused the glitter on the lid, but since I'm using my finger, and probably even if I used a brush, it does go up into the crease a little bit, but I like how it's kind of like a blown out, super blended look. Everything kind of goes together. There aren't any harsh lines. I just think this look, oh shoot, I just got it everywhere. No, I messed up, yo. Okay, crisis averted. I definitely need to use this hand for this eye. I don't know why, but for some reason, once this hand goes to this eye, I've got no control. Like I was saying, I just like this kind of like blurred out, no harsh lines kind of look for me. I go onto the lid with the most product on my finger towards the inside, and then I slowly tap towards the outer corner so it fades out and it just kind of blends itself. I don't really blend this shadow because it would be a glitter mess, and I'm happy with how it turns out just doing it like that. Okay, real quick, I'm gonna go back into that medium brown shade just a little bit up here in the crease. This brown is so warm, it's almost pink. So this is, again, a perfect Valentine's look, but obviously it's an anytime look. I think I wore this look in my last video. Did you see that video? I hope so. Okay, now super quick, I'm going back into this darker brown and just touching it a little bit on the outer corner, just making sure it's still showing up really nicely. Next up, I'm going back to my palette from the Balm, and I'm gonna be using this matte black shadow. Obviously, you can use any matte black shadow, and I'm just gonna do a really soft wing liner on the outer half of my eye. I love to do a shadow liner. It's easy, it's pretty, you don't have to worry about making mistakes that much, and it works for my eye shape really, really well. You've seen me do this a million times. It's definitely my go-to thing. I need to get back to the podcast list. And like I said, my next one is Helen Gone. I do think I've mentioned this one briefly on my vlog channel, but I know a lot of you guys don't watch my vlog channel, and that's okay. You definitely should. But I mentioned it over there and it is so good, I had to mention it here. So pretty much the story is all about the murder of Rebecca Gold. She was 22 years old and it happened in Arkansas in, I think, 2004. The podcast and the investigation by Catherine Townsend are going on at the same time. So it's a more real-time podcast. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of like the first season of Up and Vanished. So she is out there on the ground in that small town talking to people, and a lot of people that were there back then are still there in the town, and everybody knows everybody's business, and there's a lot of drama and a lot of gossip, and I really just like the way she presents the story. I love her voice. Like that was one of the things I noticed right off, and I couldn't get enough of it when there are new episodes. There hasn't been a new episode in a while, but it's definitely not over. They're still working on it, and through the last episodes, they were making a lot of progress, and it's so interesting. Okay, I'm almost done with the whole eyeshadow except for everything that needs to go underneath. It looks like this. And next up, we need to do brows. These brows are hurting. This is the new Urban Decay Brow Blade, and I'm using it in the color Taupe Trap. It is one of those dual-ended eyebrow pencil / eyebrow eyeliners. Like, I don't even know what to call it, but it's like a wet formula that you almost just like paint on with the brush tip. I love these things. I fell in love with the MAC one last year, and then when they came out with this, I was excited to try it, and I've definitely loved it just as much. I definitely want to hear what you think about the color on me, because I've kind of been like, does this work for me? This is Taupe Trap, and they say this one should be almost universal, like probably not for really, really dark brows, but they said this would be a good place to start. I really just go through my brows and do soft strokes, filling it in pretty densely on the tail and in the arch, and then I try to go with a lighter hand with upward strokes towards the front of the brow. Okay, so that brow is done. What do you think? I mean, obviously it looks better than that one, but what do you think about the color? Let me know. Okay, I'm back. You might have not known that I was gone, but look, I've got jewelry now. I've got food in my teeth. I've been away for a minute because my camera battery died, which means I owe you an apology. Having to take an intermission in the middle of a video because my camera battery died means this video is as long as Gone with the Wind, and I apologize. I'm kind of reflecting back already and thinking maybe this video combination was a little too gutsy of me. I am so sorry, but we've got to go on with the show. The rest of this makeup won't put it on itself, and I have 2 more podcasts to talk to you about. Actually, there's even more, because there's one that I wanted to mention that I hated. I don't want my camera battery to die again, so let's get the show on the road. Now that my brows are done, it's time to move on to concealer, and I'm actually combining these two. This is the Born This Way Too Faced Concealer, and then I use a little tiny dot of the Tarte Shape Tape. I cannot get off of this stuff completely cold turkey. I feel like you can see darkness under my eyes whenever I don't have just a little bit of it, but I do like how this one wears throughout the day. So I mainly go in with this one. Also go down the nose and up here and right here. And then I take a wee little dot and add it right here where I have the most darkness under my eyes. Okay, and the next podcast I want to tell you about is called Missing Alyssa. And this is one, I don't even know how I found it, but it is creepy. It's all about a girl, Alyssa Turney, that went missing when she was 17 years old in Phoenix, and I believe it was in 2001. But at the time when she went missing, her stepfather said that she just ran away to California. I think he was saying she wanted to go and live with her aunt, and she just disappeared and she took off, and there was like a note, but it didn't really add up. And I think at the time people just went with it. I could be remembering that wrong. But a few years later, a guy that was in prison actually confessed to murdering her, but it was a false confession. I think that's just one of the things that he did, like for attention. I don't really know, but he didn't kill her. But because of this false confession, a lot more attention went back on the case, and a lot more information started coming out about the stepfather, Mike. And he was a creeper, like next level creeper. He was kind of like obsessed with Alyssa, and he was really, really strict with her, like much more strict with her than his other daughter. And he also really like emphasized that like, oh, she was really poorly behaved, and he really had to keep an eye on her because of all these different reasons. Like she needed help with things, she made bad decisions. Like he was just really like in her business, to the point where he recorded all of the phone calls in the home, and he also had hidden cameras through the home, and he had just like tons of tapes and recordings of everything. And when the cops went back and asked him for the recordings from that day that she went missing, he somehow just didn't have them, when he had such a huge collection of all the recordings from all the days, and somehow that one got taped over or something like that. He like didn't have a good excuse for why that wasn't there, when you'd think that would be the first thing he would go to look at. You know what I mean? Like, what else is security footage for if it's not to help you in these kind of situations? So very suspicious, right? So as time goes on, even more information comes out, and apparently Alyssa had told people that her stepfather had abused her through her childhood. It's just a really, really dark story. It goes into his family life and all the troubles there. Like he had this brother, and the brother also has a ton of issues. He is actually out. He's not in jail. A ton of people think that he did it, including his daughter now. He actually went to jail for a whole other reason, because he's extremely paranoid and he has all these conspiracy theories, and he has like all of these weapons and bombs in his home, and it's a long story. Definitely listen to the podcast to hear the whole thing. But what's crazy is they actually talked to him. The daughter actually recorded a conversation with the dad, and they played that, and then also the host of the podcast talked to him, and it is just, it like makes your skin crawl to think that this guy is just out there living life, being a nightmare human. I mean, obviously I can't say he's guilty. I don't know that for a fact, but it doesn't look good. I'll just leave it there. Right now I need to do a little nose contour, just a little tiny bit. Next up for blush, I'm going really light and super highlighting. It's the NARS Free Soul Highlighting Blush. I love this so much. I use it almost every day. Okay, I have one more big podcast recommendation, and it is called Gladiator. And this one I listened to a while back, like months ago, and I don't know why I never actually mentioned it. Okay, so this podcast is actually coming from the Spotlight team in Boston. Did you see the movie Spotlight? I saw it. It was good. It was a lot, but that was a good movie. And that's definitely what made me really excited to listen to this podcast. It's actually all about the story of Aaron Hernandez. And I'm not a football person. I don't really know a lot about it. I mean, I had heard his name. I had briefly heard about what happened, but I didn't know a lot about it. And I just went into it like, we'll see what happens. And it was so interesting. You got to hear a lot of conversations that he had with friends and family from prison. You got to hear a lot about his family growing up and all of the pressure and all of the issues that were there. And then also they were looking a lot at the brain damage coming from football and seeing like, is football like a part of the downfall, which I thought was really, really interesting. And I was kind of surprised that I was so into listening to this podcast about a football player, but there's a crossover there and it's definitely worth listening to. Okay, for my highlight, I'm using the ABH Amrezy highlight. Amrezy, am I saying that wrong? I'm so sorry. This is such a pretty highlight and it's definitely more subtle, but it's been working for me lately. Just gonna highlight over that scab. That'll be great. Okay, so I need to move on and tell you about the podcast that I listened to that I hated. Oh my gosh, it was like damaging. I'm not even gonna lie. It's called Monstruo. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's been a while since I listened to that first episode. I listened to it right when it came out. So there was a 2-part episode 1 and I almost finished it, but it was a battle. Like I just kept getting more and more uncomfortable and grossed out by this podcast. And it is a true crime podcast, but they do move through different cases every other episode, I think. I haven't gone back and listened to more, but it is gruesome. They do not spare you one detail. In fact, I think they like elaborate. Like they go in on every like nasty, horrifying detail. And I'm not even gonna go into what they talked about in the first episode. If you're curious, which I probably am making you curious, and if I am, I'm so sorry if you're gonna go listen to it now, but obviously my curiosity got me there too. It's bad. I've never run into a true crime podcast that I just really didn't like. I mean, I've been bored by some true crime podcasts and then I just don't listen to them anymore, but this one was like too much. It was just too gory and I couldn't hang. So I dropped out of that one. I did not like it at all. I think it's by the same people that do Sword and Scale, which I feel like that's a podcast like everybody knows about already. And of course, I mean, might as well honorable mentions. You guys know I love True Crime Obsessed. Seriously, every Tuesday, I cannot be stopped. It's the only Patreon I have ever paid for ever, but I've talked about True Crime Obsessed so many times. You guys are probably sick of hearing about it. I just love it so much. It is the perfect mix of funny and documentary and true crime. It's just like everything balled up into one and they are so hilarious. And it honestly, it's like, it brightens my day, no lie. Obviously, that's a favorite. And then of course there's My Favorite Murder. And then there's all the other ones that I've talked about in the past. There are so many podcasts I've talked about in the past. I almost forgot to do my shadow under my lash line. And I'm just going in with that medium warm brown. I'm just trying to smoke it out a little bit and connect it to the shadow up top. Just a tiny bit of mascara on the lower lashes. And last for the lips, I have a new L'Oreal lip color. It's called I Create, and I'm hoping this will go with the look because I haven't tried it together before. It's very nude. It's much more nude than I usually go. But so far, I've used it a few times, and I think I really like this formula. It's not like a gloss. It's not like a liquid lipstick. It's just nice. I just like it. And this color works for me, and it's so rare that I feel good in a nude lip. What do you think? Let me zoom you out. Nope, not in. I'm really, really hoping there was a significant number of you that both wanted the makeup tutorial and wanted to know what podcast I've been loving for about the past 6 months at least. I'm not really sure if that's the case, but I'm really hoping. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know what you guys want to see. Let me know what you thought about this makeup look, what you thought about the brows, if you've heard any of these podcasts, or if you have some to suggest, or maybe you can let me know if you never want me to do this again and I've traumatized you when all you wanted to see was a makeup tutorial. I'm all ears. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and you can always find me on social media. I'm always listening. It's LeighAnnSays everywhere. I feel like my hair looks crazy. Don't look at it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye everyone. I love the way I am. Someone help me. Luna's going crazy. She is the neighborhood watch. I look like a shiny worm right now. Hello everybody. I'm not coordinated enough for this. I am a disaster.